And her words came to me as words of comfort. No surprise. Don't be afraid. And you're not going to die. You're not going to hell. You are not, I will not damn you. I made you who you are. I know you. I made you to be who you are. And so, therefore, I will not damn you for being who you are. I created you with purpose. The words that I needed to set me at ease.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Channel Within. I'm delighted to have with me Kailey Sweeney, and we're going to talk today about her NDE. Hi, Kailey, and thank you so much for being here with me today.
Hi, good morning, Nira. It's my pleasure to be here with you.
Yes, exactly. So, Kailey, let's dive into this beautiful NDE that you experienced.
Okay. When I was having my NDE, I was in a place of life where just as a reminder, I was working as a priest in an Anglican church and small church, the Chicken Coop Chapel, as I call dear, and it's my term of endearment for it. And I had experienced gender dysphoria all my life, from my childhood up. There have been some circumstances in the local community where there was a transgender student. I was trying to use the bathroom as one of the first cases of that in the U.S. and with the Supreme Court. Got dropped as a case, but I was present for everything involved with that. And so that heightened my sense of dysphoria to the point that, I went into a really deep depression, and was considering suicide, to the point that I planned my suicide. I practiced how I was going to end my life. And it was during one of those sessions that I decided I really, truly want to live. And living didn't just mean being alive and not dying. It meant for me, it's like I was not living, though I think I kept the facade of contribution to my family, to the church, to the community. Inside, I felt like I was dying. I wasn't taking anything. Wasn't taking any love or joy into myself, and I felt like the only thing that I was worthy of was giving of myself and not doing any kind of self care. Um, and so I decided, well, I do want to live a full life, and for me, a full life would have meant at least trying to be who I thought I should be, which is who I'm, how I'm living my life now. Um, and I got involved in a training program for chaplaincy, clinical pastoral education, and was just starting that program. And my thoughts were, this is a job where I can maintain doing ministry that I'm trained for, and it will be in a medical setting where they were more likely to understand that people have differences in gender identity and so forth. And besides that, I could transition before I had a job. That was my thought. Um, in the very beginning of the program, I got ill before I had a chance to progress. So within my first week, um, okay, so I had an infection in my right testicle. So show your viewers, yes, I was indeed living life as a man, because I had the parts. Uh, and uh, it became inflamed and then infected, and was extraordinarily painful. During one of my training sessions with CPEs, we had a cadre where we went to class. It was just too painful for me to sit down or stand up or drive, and I was having heart palpitations and a panic attack, and I just felt like I was going to die. I had one of the other chaplains driving me to the hospital. My family met me there, and yeah, they immediately transferred me to another hospital where I met with a urologist who uh, did a surgery like right away. Designed to drain the infection, right? So this is all the nasty details, but they happened. Um, and the day following the surgery, I began to show that I had a fever. I had sweat, like cold sweats. I started shivering, and I had sepsis. I had a severe case of sepsis. My temperature went up to 104 degrees, and it kept climbing, but they managed to control my temperature. Um, but at the same time, I had other physical reactions, like my lungs reacted in such a way that they were responding to the infection as if it were like an allergic reaction. Um, and so they began to fill with fluid, and so I had difficulty breathing. Initially, they tried oxygen, and that didn't help me. Then a CPAP to try to force air into my lungs. And finally, it came to the point where I had such difficulty breathing um, that I really thought I was going to die. Um, it's my lungs had filled, and so I just had I guess just the top of my lungs that were able to take in air, and so I was kind of like I was gasping, and I knew I thought I was going to die. Um, so I made some phone calls. I was as a pastor, I had a camp coming up in the summer, and I just think it's kind of an interesting detail. It was an archaeology camp at this old church where I was. It dated back the building for the house that where I lived, dated back to the early 1700s, which that's old in America. Maybe not over where where you from where I know where you live. I'm not going to put it over YouTube, right? And I know that you have it's like one of the oldest cities in America, if not the oldest city in America. Well, this too was a very old community from that had history back into the early 1600s, and so this property was actually was a parsonage for the vicar of a um, Church of England church there in that county where I lived. And so I called the archaeologist, and I said, I couldn't breathe very well, so I was like, hey, hey, cancel the camp. We're not gonna have archaeology camp this June because I'm gonna be dead. I mean, it was like literally that like deadpan. I knew I felt like I was going to die. Um, and I asked for a priest to come and give me last rites, and I did have a priest come and give me last rites. It was actually somebody that I knew who had come from Charlottesville, and my parents were there. My wife was there, and I gave a confession, as you know, Catholics do. Yeah, I was Anglican Catholic, so not Roman Catholic, but still had similar rites. And so I confessed that I had lived my entire life with the conviction that I should be female instead of a man, um, a girl instead of a boy when I was a child, up to when I there as I wasn't as an adult, and that I had taken opportunities to um, cross dress and even go out in public and go to support groups and other things behind the back of my family, and I would lie to cover that up because I didn't want to be I didn't want to risk being discovered. And so I confessed that as my sin. Yet, I knew that if I had the chance to really live and not die, that in my heart of hearts, that I would have the same desire. So I didn't think that my confession was a contrite confession. When you give confession, your heart should be in such a place that you think, you know, I'm going to go forth and sin no more, do my best efforts, not to sin. But in my heart, I thought, this is still here, the same feelings, and really, there's no conviction that I ever had in my life that could overcome that. And so what I thought is, if I die, I am going to be damned to hell for mortal sin. And it didn't take long. My alveoli, the sacs in my lungs, that are basically where you have your blood air barrier, where oxygen passes into your bloodstream when you inhale and you exhale carbon dioxide. Well, they were bleeding. They were allowing blood into my lungs filled with blood. Um, I was, I went into the that death gargle trying to breathe. If you've ever been around someone who is dying
My
before,
mom, yes.
yeah, that's really hard to see and be around. Um, so it's one of those things that when I'm around someone who's dying, I recognize it even from experience. I mean, you're just trying to get, and there's nowhere for the breath to go. Okay. Anyway, and so I went into respiratory distress and pulmonary failure. That's basically my blood oxygen system that would take blood throughout my body failed because my lungs couldn't get any oxygen. I wasn't getting any oxygen to my brain, and so I was um, de-statting. All my medical stats just fell off a cliff. Um, and I experienced tunnel vision. It was black around me, and it went. So all I could see was like I was looking through a tube, and then that went away. And I was in a total void, um, a place where there was no, where I experienced no space, no time, no sound. Yet somehow I was still alone in my own mind. I still had a sense of self and consciousness there, but that's all. But that's all there was.
So
Um,
is that the void, Kaylee?
I have heard other people talk about a void in their own near death experiences, and the very first thing that I had in my experience was this space of nothingness. Um, I was still present somehow, but I don't think I was there in body. I was there in some sort of aware state, but that's really it. Um, and so I had thoughts, but I didn't have sight or hearing or anything else that I could say was sensory. So I mean, if that's not the void, I don't know what else is. I don't really know how long I was there. I don't have a sense that it was a long period of time because the thoughts that I had were, my thoughts were this. Um, I mean, there's just the simple, most um, like guttural kind of response. I'm dead. One. Um, This is it. I remember thinking, this is it. This is it. I'm dead. Um, and then I had some other thoughts. I thought, I'm going to hell. I'm in this void, and I don't know why I think I'm going to go anywhere. Maybe I thought that was hell. I don't really know. I'm going to go to hell. And understanding about my last rites in my confession that that's like the natural outcome of what had occurred, and I think I expected that at any point that I would like drop into torments. um but that darkness kind of dissipated, and I experienced what I thought where I was back in the hospital. I was on some kind of a gurney, and I was being pushed down a hallway, and the people that were pushing me were talking to me, but their voices were kind of an echo. I didn't really understand what they were saying. I think I tried to say some things back to them that were probably gibberish that I don't remember. Um, there were I remember being a long, long hallway that's just like self-lit. That there were doors along the sides going down the hallway, and that there were like tall beings that were standing beside all of those doorways that seemed like they were standing guard for some reason. And I don't know where those doorways led. Um, it's just that's one of those odd things about my NDE that I remember. Um, I I even had okay, so I had this thought that just was completely random, and I've tried to research this. I have no clue what this means. I had in my mind that they were, and this doesn't make any sense at all, the Francophile mafia. What? The French loving mafia were standing guard of these. I haven't said that in an interview before. Sometimes I have these nuggets that I'll remember that I'll bring up because like I'd never talked about for a couple years about my infection, what actually led to my getting sepsis, because it was too embarrassing. But I've talked so many times. It's like, I want this to be different, to bring something in new. So this is something that's a little bit new. I have no idea. Maybe maybe one of the viewers of this will go, "Oh, I know exactly what that is." Blah blah blah. And I know where those doors go. I know people will think that someone will think that they know what that is. Anyway, I went down the long hallway, went to the lights. I was pushed into a light at the end of the tunnel, and once I was there, it's it's almost like they pushed me back into my body that was in its dying state. But from there, my soul left my body and exited through the the roof of the room where they were working on me, trying to revive me. I went through the top. It was a couple of stories above me in that hospital from where I was, and I flew through those. Like seeing the steel rafters in between each floor and the hung ceilings. It was wild. And then I finally went through the roof. Down, I could see the top of, like the hospital had a flat roof. It was like a gravel and tar flat roof, and I flew away from that, and I was going up and up, down, and I saw the city of Williamsburg, like because that's where the hospital was. I could see the river, um, like his old historic Williamsburg, Busch Gardens. I knew it was Williamsburg, and it just left below me like I was um, on a rocket flying into space. And so the Earth dropped away, and to the point that it looked like I was standing on the moon looking back at Earth, because it was just this, just this sphere hanging in dark space. Um, and as I was traveling upwards, this is a diagram I drew in 2020 to try to help me remember some of my experience. Um, and it's very crude, I know. And no, nothing looked like this. They weren't stick figures. The earth wasn't flat. Um, so this was just I knew what this stuff means, right? So say, oh, I've talked about this in other um interviews, this diagram. But what people never ask me about is like, what's that? That looks like an arrow. There's somebody over here that might even have a gun. So when I, well, I'll explain. I'll get back to that in a minute. So I'm ascending up, and I hear cheering. I don't know how cheering. Yay! Yay! Um, I didn't hear yay, but what my experience was extreme joy, extreme welcome to this space that I perceived to look like a stadium with different levels that was kind of conical shaped that or spiral that went up and up as far as I could see, and it was filled with translucent light bearing um, beings that still appeared to have some semblance of their earthly imprint on them, faces, even a little bit of clothing for some of them. Like some of them looked at me like they were celebrating the Day of the Dead from Mexico. Is something that I remember for some of them in here. Anyway, I felt this. Well, I felt welcome. I knew I wasn't in hell at that point, but I wasn't really exactly sure where I was. But I felt safe. Um, but at the same time, then I started to hear some other things. Um, like over here, people go, "Why do you have boo?" Well, just like yay, I didn't actually hear boo. But concerning these figures that I have drawn on Earth, I knew that they were observing the Earth as if this were theater in the round and Earth was in the center. And I didn't, you don't have a body, physical body, you don't have a brain, you don't sense with eyes and ears because those are down on earth on a table on a slab or wherever you are, and that's not perceiving nothing. I'm perceiving whatever is here, but in some other way. Um, and likely outside of time and space, without the confines of having to be in one place at one time, without having to rely on vision. That's when I haven't heard people talk about those things. People talk about like well, they saw this and they heard this, and someone said this to them. They saw a person. Well, yeah, I mean, I kind of saw that people, what looked like people, but I wasn't seeing them with my eyes. It was like more like knowledge. Um, yeah, I don't know how to describe it. So what I knew somehow that they were watching the Earth and still interacting with activities that were going on Earth, both good and bad. And one of the things that I observed was this was 2017. This is June of 2017. And I saw a number of different things. I lived a very privileged life up till then, and I started a homeless shelter. I didn't know I talked about that in the last one. I mean, I worked with other people to start a homeless shelter, but I worked in homeless services as a pastor. Um, and so I knew that people suffered, but I really hadn't experienced it firsthand all that much. I think my spirit was naive. And so I saw in what I think is the country of Syria during the civil war, was a bomb dropped by the Assad government on a building that, was either a school or a hospital, something of that sort, where there were a number of women and children, and it collapsed. The building collapsed on them. And so they met therein, and somehow that experience caused uh, a like a wailing in heaven, like a mourning. Now, I don't think we have like emotional needs in that space the same way we do here. We're not going to have we're not going to have chemical reactions in a spirit space like we have here. So we're not going to feel things the same way. But because they love the people so much who are both dying, the people who were ordered to drop the bombs, and the person, I guess Assad, who was Al Bashir Assad. Anyway, what was it about his upbringing? What was it about where he was in that place that made him so hateful or so trapped that he felt like he had to end the lives brutally of innocents, not people fighting the war, but people who were either in a place of learning or of finding shelter or finding care. And and so this wailing, I think, was for the entire situation. Now, I could easily say, well, yeah, it was for the people who were killed, but I think it was that entire situation of the war, um, that that the hatred that leads to action, that leads to death, that got into such a cycle that it was self-perpetuating and was perpetuating destruction and a coming apart of society and life. And that's not the way we should operate. Not in those kinds of cycles. And so they're responding to that. And so that's why I have some of these figures, representative of the evils of the world in earlier times, of bows and arrows, people killing each other, people raping, pillaging. Um, that's not a hair dryer. That's a yeah, not a very crude one. We develop weapons, um, that where we have to protect, that we feel like we have to take the life of another person in order to protect ourselves, or use them to inflict our will upon someone else, and that it doesn't harm heaven, it doesn't harm others, it doesn't harm God, but they love us so much that they feel, I think, a kind of pity for us, because they love it so much, and I think they're empathetic to our internal pain, both the pain that causes us to lash out and the pain we actually experience as a result of someone lashing out against us. So that's actually the best description I've given of that ever in a in one of these interviews. So so I had that experience, and then I kept rising, and I do think this is the intermediate state. I don't think this is a final state. I think this is more like a way station. Since I've had time to digest this over the years, that you go to before you go somewhere else, either coming back and being reborn, or ascending into wherever you ascend to.
And maybe not even coming back, right? The NDE is.
Maybe not even coming back. I mean, I think, for my part, that that this experience is for me to be a bodhisattva, of the earth. That at least in this timeline, right, where I put off my ascension to come back and teach. Actually, this is like going back to your school days, we talked about a little bit, like I had these feelings in my entire life that I was created to have because I was created with purpose. And this is like God, like whatever you would call God, snatching me out of the earth and going, "Hey, I made you this way, not for you to feel depressed or have self-hatred, but for a purpose of, um, living authentically, being yourself. And yes, that is different from your biology. Your spirit is different from your biology. And you're supposed to be a conduit of love to share my love with others who in your world are forgotten, who are unloved, who are hated. And so that was my purpose for being. That was my purpose for being here and for coming back as a bodhisattva, bringing that kind of love and teaching and sharing with other people, and just emanating that spirit, um, that actually can be very draining. Um, Trying to emanate that joy and love all the time. But anyway, this person, I know you want to hear about her, right? I was Anglican Catholic. I would pray the rosary. I think when I was in the void, I have this flicker of a memory that I had prayed the Jesus prayer, Lord Jesus Christ, Son of God, have mercy on me, a sinner, that I had prayed, Hail Mary, full of grace, the Lord is with thee. Blessed art thou among women, and blessed is the fruit of thy womb, Jesus. Holy Mary, Mother of God, pray for us sinners, now and at the hour of our death. Amen. And, well, a personage, spirit, came out on a balcony that appeared to me as female. She had a group that moved out with her. I'll refer to them as her entourage because she's so special, you know. But she was wearing long flowing robes. I can't really tell you that they had color. Color is a thing that you have with vision. I don't know that it was color. What I did experience is, her head is covered but on her head she bore a crown. Around her neck she bore roses. And I couldn't behold her face. She was absolutely glowing, from her visage. And what I experienced was uh, like a physical love that was so strong that a love that was my being. Like I was supported by love, and that I was loved, and I was permeated by love because of her love for me. It sustained me in that space where my body had failed me. Um, and but still, even then, to see her, I was not worthy of being in that presence. And her words came to me as words of comfort. No surprise. Don't be afraid. And you're not going to die. You're not going to hell. The words that I needed to set me at ease. Now, I've had people in other conversations say, so she's goddess. She wrote it as goddess. Well, I mean, I perceived her as the queen of heaven. Um, Not necessarily the source of divinity, but certainly reflective of and participating in divinity that I think all of these souls are and were, including myself. But there's nothing more special than the way that she participated in that divinity. Um, anyway, she wasn't the only voice that I heard. From there, the voice that I experienced, I won't say heard, and I hasten to say voice, but it was like if I had to explain it, a sound is like a rushing river over rocks, or a powerful waterfall, or a billion voices speaking the same thing all at once. And it was more like it reverberated my beingness more than just hearing. And it was, you are not, I will not damn you. I made you who you are. I know you. I made you to be who you are. And so, therefore, I will not damn you for being who you are. I created you with purpose. Now, the things that people, I could say the church, but I could say the same with virtually any religion. The things that people have said and done, and I in my mind went forward to, like, throughout all of history, throughout all of human history, the things that people have done and said in my name make me angry. I mean, it could be disappointed. It's, we're in a place where we're beyond language here. This isn't a language of damnation. This is a language of a parent and their child, having committed some act that breaks the heart of the parent. Um, and I understood that it was because we use the name in order to control others and to get them to behave. Be a good boy and girl. Be a good parishioner. Be a good citizen, right? Or if you don't, you get to go to the bad place. And you don't want to go there because it has all these scary creatures there who want to tear at your flesh. And guess what? At the very end, if you don't please the name, you're going to be judged at the end of time and thrown into a place where your body will eternally burn in fire. And every kid at some point has touched the cooktop of their, while their mom is cooking something, and then gone and had a burn. And the idea of flaming, being your flesh engorged in flame, I can think of nothing more painful, more horrific. And so, yeah, that's used to try to get people to obey. And so I understood that is what is being told to me. And so my life, my coming back, God sent me back as just a small correction. I don't expect to come here and I would love to share my experience and have it be something that would change the world to the point that people would just all drop their arms and love one another. I'm not that, I've seen what humanity does to itself. I'm not that naive, but what God said to me is, you will go back, you will love the unloved, and they will know that I love them through you. Further, he said, some of those who now hate you and hate these others will learn they'll learn not to hate, because they know you, they'll experience your love, my love, Because when you love another person, you love another human being. In fact, when you love the creation in the world that you live in, and you love yourself, even you love me, right? And the way that I experience the world now is that we are in unity with one another, and that unity that we share, that is a vision of the divine, of God's self. Um, and so I was told, go back and teach 6 words. The currency of eternity is love. And I understood. I mean, these 6 words, I can write paragraphs about them because they have a certain meaning at face value. But you think about currency and it's a means of exchange, right? Well, love is not a means of exchange because you never run out of love. Love is never extinguished. It is not a commodity that's taken out of the ground or grown that you can run out of. It is forever and ever and ever. So you have this, so something that's infinite. Does that mean that it is, if we had all the energy in the world, then eventually energy would have no cost. In America, seems that we have so much water. That water, the value of water is pretty inexpensive compared to other places in the world. That's changing. Well, it seems like love would become the same way, but love is the only thing that truly has a value on an eternal scale. Um, Over time, the things that humanity values, whether it be energy or money or fame or power or land or monuments that we build for ourselves, to say, I'm so great, you know, and you're trying to, those things, like you're trying to escape your own death. You're trying to escape your own mortality by being remembered forever and ever and ever because you're so great. And over the course of time, some of the greatest monuments on earth, like say the Great Pyramids, even those things will be reduced by the winds and sands of the Sahara to dust. Yeah, we're just a few thousand years into their existence. I mean, 5 to 10,000 years. I mean, that's still being debated and discovered. But in the scale of the age of the earth, or even just the age of humanity, that's just a second, and they will go away, and Pharaoh will be remembered no more, and all the little people in the world like me, you know, they're my child, my grandchild might remember me, but after that, maybe somebody will find a book and read it, and that'll remain for a little bit, but even that will go away, and there will be no memory of me, and that's okay, um but love is transformative. Love is creative. When we act on our love, and it's more than just some chemical feeling that we have inside of ourselves, when we act upon that love and we sacrifice, when we give of ourselves to another human being who is in need of our love and of our action, it's like we're taking back some of that entropy from the world, and we're creating something that grows larger, larger, and larger, like throwing a rock into a pond, where the kinetic energy of that rock hitting the pond creates waves that spread out. But they're not limited by that pond. We have space time. We have forever and ever and ever for that energy of your love to permeate forever and ever, because you love someone, they are changed. They pass your love on to someone else and someone else and someone else and someone else through space and through time. And then eventually we meet the end of our life. must reckon with our mortality, and we come into, a space kind of like this, or whatever it is, meeting Jesus, meeting Allah, meeting Muhammad, meeting, your ancestors, meeting your dog. I would love to go back and have all my dogs from my life come back and greet me. That would just be the most wonderful thing in the world, to see Morty again, and see Buddy again, and my little buddy who's around here somewhere, Hootie. I mean, to have them come and marry me, that would be like my dream of heaven. I think it'll be different for each person, because they're there to help you acclimate from this life into the next, and to wherever you're going in this continuum, whether you hang out for a while and kind of, I don't know, talk to other spirits, talk to angels, whatever other entities there are, and then, you say, hey, I'm ready, and you sign a new contract, and you say, okay, well, this is your DNA, this is the time frame that you're going to be in, this is your parents, that's like your constraints that decide, at least part of your purpose, and you come back, you're born, and you live that, or you ascend, and that wave that you are on the ocean of time and of spirit collapses back into the ocean of love and spirit, and you become one with that, and you still are. You don't stop. You are. You could still say I am, but you're part of the greatest whole, the the whole that is the entirety of everything. I experienced coming back to my body. When I was in my body, I was on a ventilator. I was in a coma for about a week, medically induced. I don't know if that is actually what you medically would call a coma, but I was unaware of my surroundings, and I was out. I was out. Um, and I had machines keeping me alive so that my body could heal from that horrible event that um, forced my soul and consciousness out of my body, or at least caused me to have this experience, and however that occurs. And while I was there, I was in a little, like I was in a room. I experienced being in a room on a bed, with a mirror on one side, speakers on that, and a desk with a book. And during that week, I knew that the whoever was on the other side, like her, angels, other beings, were watching me. I couldn't see them, but they were still speaking to me while I was there to help, keep me from freaking out. Um, because I didn't really know what was going on. So they kept me comforted, just like the doctors and nurses and anesthetists were trying to keep my body calm so that I could relax and allow the machines to breathe for me and keep me alive. They were doing the same thing for my spirit. So I'm there. I'm not in a void the same way I was at the very beginning. Um, and I was told that I have this contract for a book, and they invited me to look at it. So I went and I looked at it, and it took me through my life. A lot of people have their life review, and they see things and they experience it from the standpoint of another person. I experience it from the standpoint of something on a page. Um, and what I realized is this is the language that it was written in was the language of a contract. I had been a real estate broker for 20 years, and I dealt with hundreds and probably thousands of contracts through the time. And this isn't like a contract, like a binding contract, like, well, if you don't do this, then there's going to be these penalties. It's more like these are choices that I have made that set me in a particular direction. And because of the way that I live, because of the way that I love, and the talents that I have been given by God, by Holy Other, um, that I could live a life with certain purpose. Um, and that same purpose that got shared with me during my NDE. And so I read it and I decided, yes, that is the life that I will continue living once I am fully capable of living my life. And I signed the sucker. Just like people do when they're born, before they're born, when you have your life contract, people want to, I mean, I know people in the comments are going to be going like, life contract? What is that? Some of them want, then the people who are very, very, like, they know the Akashic records and all this other stuff. They're so well, they know everything. Well, they're going to, well, you don't sign life contract twice. Well, sorry, in my experience, I was shown what I was too afraid to do during my life. And basically, I was just saying, I'm not going to let fear keep me from being myself and living my life purpose ever again. Or at least I will do my attempt in my life at living that life. So that's what I did. And I came back, right? And I woke up and I wasn't able to uh well, they eventually when they took me off the ventilator, I could talk, but I couldn't swallow, I couldn't eat, I couldn't stand up, I couldn't walk, I couldn't what's even strong enough to hold my cell phone. I had to learn to walk in, I had to learn how to go to the bathroom, I mean, all of this stuff. But I gained my strength back. In about 1 year's time, my life turned on its head. I started practicing a form of Buddhism, but that gave me the boost to be able to make the changes that I needed to transition socially and medically within the next year. And it cost me heavily. It cost me my marriage. It cost me my friends. It cost me, um, you know, my worldly possessions, but that didn't matter. That was a little thing. Um, but I began living a life that is who I am now. And so I am now genuinely being able to say to people that, if you're not living a life that is congruent to your life's purpose, if you're having a sense of that, maybe you know what that is, or maybe you don't, but you have that heaviness on your heart. I think it is possible, through meditation and other means, to um, at least take steps to get close to discovering what that is. And you love yourself enough to try. You don't let fear stop you, right? Um, and everything that you do, if your actions are not out of love for another, then you shouldn't do it. If it's not out of love for yourself, same thing. Love for yourself does allow you to sacrifice for other people, because you are one. So when you're helping another, you're really helping the unity of all. So that's what I'm trying to do now. And so that's why I'm sharing this now. This has gone viral in India and Pakistan, not from my post, but from someone else who found it and posted it and is using it to describe their near-death experience. I think as of today is received like over 300 million views on TikTok and Reddit and Instagram, and it was even featured in like the Pakistan Times and a newspaper in India for this gentleman who describes his near-death experience and then uses this. And me, I wrote a memoir, sort of a memoir. This is a fictionalization. Chicken Coop Chapel is a fictionalization of my time as a pastor leading up to my near-death experience and a little bit of my time afterwards, and that's on Amazon right now. And I have more books coming out after that. They're already written and ready to be published that I have to publish by this summer. To continuously tell my experience of trying to go forth and uh, share God's love with others, so that they have the experience of, that their life has value and that they are loved. Currency of eternity is love. See some equal signs there? Yeah, you have value. I'm like directly out there to you. You are loved. I love you. God loves you. You're worthy and you should love yourself enough to be yourself, no matter what anyone says, no matter what the culture and the times may seem to say, you know, those things that they do and say do not please God. Love yourself and love others. And my prayer is that we can put a cease to the darkness and share the light of love with the world, and that love will finally overcome. And I don't really have any more that I can share than that.
I have some questions for you, Kailey.
Please do.
So, the female form of divinity, did she
Yeah.
identify herself? And the message, the currency of eternity is love.
Yes.
Did she tell you that, or did God tell you that?
Um, I think what we would call God or holy other, in this case, I labeled that up there as oversoul. That's a during the transcendental period in the U.S. The transcendentalists would call the source of soul the oversoul, and I experienced that as like being the source of all life and love. So
Mhm.
like a unified soul that spoke to me. God spoke to me, but I can't. How do I separate her and all of these from that, or even these? Because if you see, we are all connected. We are all connected. And so when I said it was like a billion voices, or a river, or a waterfall, which of course has, quadrillions of water molecules, being drawn down by the gravity of the earth, all of was the voice that I experienced. So the voice I experienced was everything. So yeah, it was the voice of God. It wasn't specifically from her, and I don't think I heard it. I think it was um, something more substantial than hearing, smelling, seeing, tasting, feeling. It was being that touched my being and changed my being. Does that make sense at all?
It totally does.
Okay.
It-
I
it-
mean, I'm talking in this kind of language that, I haven't studied this stuff. It's not like I've taken a class. That's just what I seem to have received. That's here in me now. Okay.
did she identify herself though,
No.
or no? Okay. How long after did you start talking about your experience?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I think well, I shared. There was a nurse, who was um, well, maybe she was a respiratory therapist, and one night when I was awake in the hospital, she came to me and she said, "I was there when you stopped breathing, and I told your parents that that I thought you will be okay, and I prayed over you." And she came and she hugged me and she prayed over me. And I shared my experience with her. And so that was almost immediately. I don't know who she was. She may have just, for all I know, she might have been an angel. You know, I never saw her again before I left the hospital. She never came back to visit me again. And she came in the middle. She came in the middle of the night when there was nobody, when there was nobody else there, and she just made me feel welcomed and loved. That was the first time I remember. Um, Later, probably, well, I made a video that I put on Facebook while I was still in the hospital, and I was sitting up in a window in my hospital room, looking out, and I talked about unity and that we're all one and that we should love one another. And I cannot find that thing. Should still be on Facebook, but this is 2017. Can't find it now. Probably is on an old phone that's dead and maybe in the trash. From long ago. Um, so there was that, and I think I shared with my family, and I don't. They didn't really have any real response to it. They certainly know now because I've been talking about it for years. And I shared it with um, my sangha. Um, and later, when I was interviewed for my chaplaincy residency, I shared my near-death experience with my supervisor, to say that I can understand people who are in extreme medical situations, the anxiety that they must have, or I have empathy for the dying. So I shared it, whether someone received it for how I experienced it. I don't know. Um, yeah, so
Thanks,
there's
Kailey.
that.
You mentioned past lives. Was that difficult for you to reconcile because of your Christian background?
If we're all one, then the whatever lives came before, we were still unified to those. So I don't think it's like my specific spirit consciousness necessarily experienced other lives. I mean, yeah, I could have. I don't remember them. Maybe somebody could hypnotize me and bring them back, and I could say something. But in a place where time isn't really relative like it is here.
There is no
We
time,
have
right?
we chase the clock because we're going to die. If you're in a space where you're not chasing the clock anymore, are you able to perceive the past and the future, or is it all available at once? I can't say I really know. My like physics reconciliation mind goes, well, everything exists all at once, and I'm a part of that system. So anything that came before me is part of me. And so, yeah, I think to that extent, that past lives, as we call them, we have to we give names to things so we can understand them, and maybe even think that we can control them. But so for whatever they are, yeah, absolutely. I can reconcile prior lives. My I I live in multiple faith traditions, really, at this point. In Buddhism, in terms of my practice, I do attend a Christian church. I love receiving Holy Communion, because the unity that I would have with receiving the body and blood of Christ is the unity that I have with the congregation, is the unity that I have with the church, is the unity that I have with the Christ and with God and with all persons. And so that all of that, not just symbolism, but The love that is binding is phenomenal. So that really speaks to me too. And then I have this from this experience, I have the testament of the living way, my testimony of how I live my life, my living way, my pilgrimage, my life that I share with other people who are ongoing their own pilgrimage in life, and I'm walking along with them on that journey. That's its own thing too, but really they're part of the same journey. So they're not really a separate faith tradition. To me, they're all one, and the closest I can come to describing it is say I'm a pilgrim, and I am on the path of the living way. I am on the way of life and love.
I love that because there are many ways up the mountain.
Okay,
So I have final questions. So, what brings you joy these days, Kaylee?
um, yeah, I love my friends. I love time, just being present with my friends. This this lady in this picture, she is one of my best friends in the world, and I love her. This is my dad. I love being with my mom and my dad and my brother and my daughter and her family, with my grandbaby. Holding my grandbaby brings me immense joy. My fur baby, who's over there sleeping. There's hardly any better joy that I get than snuggling with that guy. That gives me tremendous joy. It gives me joy to share this story. I'm passionate about this because people are passionate in their hate, and they're passionate in their destruction. And so I want to be passionate in my love. And a way for me to love others is for me to share this story, and for people to understand that I was living in a box, in a prison of my own construction. And God freed me from that prison, in quotation marks. It was fictional, It wasn't really, I wasn't in prison. It was the bounds that I had put on myself because of fear, because of thinking that I needed others' approval. Well, there's a lot of people do not approve of this. There are people who write in the contracts that'll put Bible verses and any number of different things to show that, I'm misguided, I'm possessed by a demon, I'm going to go to hell. God doesn't do this, God doesn't do that. That's fine. That doesn't penetrate me. This was my experience. And no matter what, I am going to love others and live in love and peace, even with those who would think less of me. They're not necessarily who I am here for. I am here for others who hear those voices in public and in church and in their families and wherever else, that they're told that they don't belong, and that they have a mental illness, um, and they don't have any right to do what they're contemplating doing because of the shame that it brings upon the family. You only have shame when you take that shame upon yourself. Let them keep it. Let them hold on to it. You don't have to embrace that. Let it go. That is a rock on the path of your journey. Find your path around that rock and live your life. And in some cases, sometimes you just don't look back. I have found that as I live my journey, that as I share and love, that some of the people that I thought were behind me caught up and are now walking alongside me, that now are participating in my life, right? And I'm participating in theirs, and we love one another. And that was just a setback. And now we don't have that anymore. But I did have to walk through that or walk around it or crawl over it, whatever image you want to use for that. Did I answer your question?
It does.
Okay.
What
Anything else?
advice do you have for your younger self?
Oh, my younger self. Yeah, it used to have been that I wish I would have allowed myself to live as my uh, I authentic self at a younger age. But that again, that's a construct. It's language that I use to explain something, to maybe try to uh, put it in its own little box, therefore to able to control it. I have released that. I don't need it. I don't require, you know, 50, however many years I've lived this life, for all of that to be Kailey, because it is my path that I have lived up until now that allow me to be me, good and bad. I mean, I do have the same sufferings that others have: physical, mental, emotional, spiritual. But I can look back and see I have I've made it through it before. Sometimes I even have the map of how I overcome whatever that obstacle is, because I've done it before. Sometimes it's a new obstacle, but I know I can overcome it or not overcome it. What's the worst that can happen? That I join the great cloud of witnesses and just watch you all here on earth, continuing to try to love one another and to screw up a whole lot. And I'll just be going, hey, you need to love one another, and hopefully inspire you to do that. My message is always that if you're struggling with anything else and you don't know where to go, what to do, and you're stuck, medit meditation again, that's like, what does that mean? Think over say to yourself, currency of eternity is love. The currency of eternity is love. The currency of eternity is love. And as you do that, your mind will begin to play with it. And then you will sleep it and dream it. And then you'll wake up and you'll breathe it and you'll live it. And it will become who you are, because you are of value. And then you realize that you are of value and you do love yourself, and you do end up understanding that you are eternal in and through creative love that we all share with one another, by whatever means that is, whether by divine or by some kind of physical law. I think they're one and the same. But make a decision to love yourself and to love others. How
Thank you
about
so
that?
much for I love
Yeah.
it.
Okay.
Thank you so much, Kelly, and thank you for being here with me today. And I hope everyone enjoys this as much as I did.